the other thing you asked about was B12. There are just so many uses for B12 IM intramuscularly. It doesn't work near as well in most of the oral forms, except now that we have the liposomal delivery form, which gets it into the body a lot better, that type is working better. But a lot of the other ones, the sublinguals and so forth, that say that they absorb, I've seen studies that show that some people absorb them quite well and other people don't absorb them at all.
Yeah, could you maybe even elaborate on that a bit more, because before you go into the details of why B12 is important, because I get so much feedback, especially from vegetarians, and this is where the big, as you know, the big issue is, because B12 deficiency is just epidemic in people who pursue a vegan diet over a number of years. But they claim that, I guess, seaweed sources or these others, so from are sufficient sources of, or supplemental sources of that. But from your experience and review of the literature and clinical experience, you have not really seen any form of oral B12 other than this liposomal delivery system to be effective.
To be uniformly effective.
Uniformly effective.
I have seen effective in this person, and the next two it fails. And the only one I've seen close to uniformly effective is the liposomal, and those are fairly new.
Okay, thanks.
Now, the reason for that is B12 has one of these really, really intricate mechanisms of getting into the body. Why it was ever created or evolved, whichever, that way, who knows? But that's the way it was created or evolved. And that is that first, the B12, which is bound in what one might call an organic matrix, it first has to be dissolved out of that organic matrix, and that happens with the use of hydrochloric acid and pepsin. I shouldn't say the use, the production, normal production by the stomach of normal hydrochloric acid and pepsin. Now, when we're younger, our stomachs do that wonderfully well. Most of us. There's some exceptions, but most of us do that wonderfully well. As we get older, everything slows down with time. We can't run as fast. We might get gray hair. We might need reading glasses. We can't keep up with the younger athletes. Everything slows down. And we can sure slow down the rate of slowing considerably, but it does slow down. And one of the things that slows down is the function of the stomach. Now, why should the stomach be so unique? Oh, by the way, I have a book out on all this, Joe. It's called Why Stomach Acid is Good for You.
Where is that available on Amazon or your site, or where is
it? Yes, it is. It is. Okay. And it was written with Dr. Lane Leonard, L-E-N-A-R-D. So if one puts Leonard L or Wright J and looks it up on Amazon, it's called Why Stomach Acid is Good for You. Anyway, why should we imagine that our stomachs would make more acid with time? Why is it that people don't start getting heartburn until they're in their 30s and 40s? That is, the majority of cases of heartburn are people in their 30s and 40s and 50s. And we don't get it when our stomachs are young and making lots of hydrochloric acid. Instead, we start getting all those heartburn, indigestion, GERD type diseases when we're older. It's actually almost always because our stomachs are not making enough acid. I can't tell you how many folks have come into the clinic, they're having a case of GERD, GERD, or heartburn, and they've been told to take an acid blocker, and I tell them, no, did you ever get your stomach acid measured? And everybody gives me a blank stare. No, nobody ever measured my stomach acid. Why? They just told me to take this acid blocker. I said, before you do, why don't you just measure your stomach acid? Here's the test over here. It's a very exacting test done with very precision German equipment to a protocol that came out in the Canadian Medical Association Journal, nicely scientific here. And about 95 out of 100 people who come in with those symptoms don't have enough acid down in their tummies. And I tell them, take some hydrochloric acid with your meals, please. Every health food store sells it. Take anywhere from 1 to 3 to 4 capsules, and in a few cases more per meal. And people do, and they come back and they say, I never would have believed it. I was having what my doctor said was over-acidity and acid indigestion, and I took hydrochloric acid and went away. Darned. I said, well, yeah, that's what happens when you restore normal function in your stomach. In the 1930s, some Mayo Clinic researchers rounded up people at different decades of life, 10s, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, etc., and they literally pumped their stomachs out. We don't have to do that anymore to test the stomach, but that's what they did in the 1930s. And what they found was that by the time we're all 60, over half of us don't have enough free acid. Free acid is the stuff that digests with breakfast, lunch, and dinner. To digest all of our food, we don't have enough free acid. Well, at that point, if we don't have enough, we can eat the best organic, free-range diet in the whole doggone world. And if we don't get the nutrients digested out of it, it's not going to do us that much good. Moving on to B12. Once we've digested that B12 out of the food supply, either on our own or by taking the extra hydrochloric acid if we're over 60 and we need it, once we've done that, here's the loose B12 molecule. Does that get into the body? Nope. Sorry, folks. Instead, the way the creation or the evolution is, there's a molecule made by the stomach, happens to be called the intrinsic factor. I don't know why it was called that, but it's in the books. Look it up. And this stuff called intrinsic factor literally gloms onto vitamin B12 like a big old handle, and the two molecules, the B12 and the intrinsic factor, glide down the stomach all the way into the intestines through 20 feet of small intestine, and then according to all the textbooks of regular medicine, when these two molecules bonded together get to the end of the small intestine, the ileum, then what's absorbed is first the intrinsic factor. Those cells grab onto the intrinsic factor and they start pulling it into the cells of the intestine, and then it's absorbed. Now, getting back to stomachs that don't make hydrochloric acid very well, and as we get older, that's the case, they don't make intrinsic factor very well either. So we can swallow all the B12 we want to, and if our bodies aren't making intrinsic factor, our stomachs aren't making intrinsic factor because perhaps we're older or perhaps our stomachs are damaged, and we don't make this factor, why, that B12 is not going to get in, because what's used to get it in is, like I say, this intrinsic factor is attached just like a handle. The cells of the intestine grab that handle and pull the B12 into the body.
Hello, this is Dr. Mercola, and I sure hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did, but I want you to know it's only a small segment of the complete 2 to 3 hour full interview I did. And those interviews are available to members of my Inner Circle. And every month, members of my Inner Circle will receive a complete 2 to 3 hour interview of one of the top health experts in the world who is willing to share their secrets they've learned over a lifetime to help you and your family take control of your health. In addition to that, Inner Circle members also receive a 2-hour DVD full of health information that you can use as an alternative to watching commercial TV, and a 24-page printed newsletters that's mailed directly to your home every month. And it is one of the best values I've ever put together. It's a complete no-brainer. I encourage you to join. There's absolutely no risk at all, because if for any reason at all you are not completely 100% satisfied, my customer service team has clear, specific instructions to give you a prompt refund. So it doesn't get any better than that, and I encourage you to take advantage of this special offer so that you and your family members can start to take control of your health.